Hey everyone, CPO here, and in this video we're going to be going over maintenance. Yesterday was a vehicle maintenance day for me. I needed to change the oil, change spark plugs, rotate tires, and I have low coolant level, so thought I would take care of that as well. By the way, one cool thing about air suspension is it makes it really easy to get my car up on the lift with the suspension in my drive height setting. And when I used to have, regular non-adjustable springs, sometimes I would have a hard time getting the lift underneath. I might even have to drive up over a 2x4 to get me some clearance. But now with the air suspension, I can just raise it to a point that makes it easy. By the way, if you're going to be taking off tires, in this case, I'm going to do a tire rotation. You don't need to put the lift or the jack at its fullest position, just high enough to get the tires off. By the way, I don't know if my orange underglow inside the grill area gets enough love. So here's a look at that again, just for fun. Anyway, I've done several videos on several of the things I'm doing here. One video I haven't done though is on my oil change method. I use the vacuum pump method, and I've been doing it for years. Actually, I've never done a traditional oil change on this car. So I got it in 2020, early 2020. And yeah, I've always done the vacuum method. So basically, I got this vacuum oil extractor from West Marine. You can get them a variety of places, Amazon, probably all that stuff. I usually pump it up about 20 times and then go to work doing other things and just let it suck oil out of the dipstick tube. And it works really, really well. While that is extracting oil, I'm going to go ahead and loosen up the oil filter. I actually have this little oil filter socket, which is a 3/8 inch socket. And I do that not only so that I can take the oil filter off, but so that I can torque it down later with a 3/8 inch torque wrench. So you can see here, we're getting close to getting all of the oil out. And what I like to do at that point is go ahead and like move it around a little bit and just make sure that I'm getting it shoved in every corner it can get to from there. And sometimes pumping it a few times will help. Next, I'm going to go ahead and pull the oil filter. I usually let it drain into the oil filter reservoir, and I'll show you. I also suck that oil out, and I don't think anybody ever does that except for me. I've never seen anybody else do it, but I'll show you that. And then straight into a Ziploc baggie, where then that's where I separate the filter from the filter housing. Keeps everything clean. You'll notice I'm not wearing gloves, and in fact, I'm wearing a white watch band, and I am perfectly comfortable doing that because I can do an entire oil change without spilling a drop. You can see some oil left over in that little reservoir. I'm going to take care of that in a second. The first thing I want to do is add some oil to the car. So I've got this filter. I'll put a link. It's from Amazon is where I got it, but super nice. It locks into place in your fill cap. Where your fill cap would go. And yeah, it's super sturdy. You could really like shove some oil down in there. As a matter of fact, I'll squeeze oil and make the process faster. But I'm putting oil in it before I finish the extraction because I need to make room in my oil extractor container. So because I use FCP Euro and I recycle, send that back and get a refund on it, I'm going to put it back in the same container. So, by the way, while we're talking about oil, I do want to point out, if you buy oil that is measured by liters, that is not the same thing as quarts. My car takes 6 quarts, but I buy 6 liters, which means I don't really need to use everything that I buy. If I just dump in the 5 liter and then the 1 liter containers, I'm going to actually overfill. And I think more people should pay attention to that. If you're buying oil that is in liters, but you're trying to use quarts, just know there's a difference in measurement there. So now here I am, I'm like using the pump and I'm sucking out all the rest of that used oil out of that oil filter reservoir. I just like to do that. It's not a lot in there, maybe a couple tablespoons, but I like to get all that out while I have a chance to. Alrighty, that's nice and cleaned out. And next, I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of what I believe to be the oil. So again, Liters to quarts, I'm only going to put probably about half of this to start with, just to see where I'm at from a level perspective. I'll check the level here in a minute. Now I'm going to swap the used O-ring for the new O-ring. I just use a little bit of oil from inside the filter canister to lubricate the O-ring, and then it snaps right in there. And yeah, screw it down. And then I'm one of those guys that will torque everything that has a torque spec. So yeah, I torque my oil filter. I know most of you just probably run it down until it's snug, and that's probably good enough. There is a torque spec, and it is listed on the top of that canister. It's 25 plus 5 Newton meters, which means 25, and then you've got plus or minus 5 Newton meters. I usually just run it to 25 and call it good. So the next thing I'm going to do is spark plug swap. And this is basically just sped up footage of me going through that process. It's really quick and easy, actually. But I have done another video on changing spark plugs so you can see my exact process. This is about 6,000 miles, I'd say, on these race plugs. I've done not a lot of like heavy footed driving, but a little bit here and there. But they're in good shape. But again, FCP Euro, I just send the old ones back and get a refund, and then they send me new ones. Like, it's pretty simple. I always check gap on these at 0.024. And in this case, two of the four were a little bit bigger, maybe 0.025, and the other two were spot on. So I just adjusted the two that needed adjusting and call it good. And yes, I torque spark plugs. These are 30 Newton meters, I believe, just off the top of my head. Fact check me on that. And then, yeah, because I have the EQT grounding kit, these little bolts here are just holding in the coils, and they don't have to worry about holding the ground. So now I'm going to go ahead and rotate the tires. If you have a tire that's off the ground and you need to break the torque, I torque them into 90. You can use this little inertia method that I'm using here. It's, you know, it's an easy way. I didn't want to drop the car and put it on the ground. And of course I didn't loosen them before I lifted the car. You could have somebody go in there and like press the brake, or you can, you know, shove something in there to hold the tire from moving. But the inertia method works well for me. So I use it, assuming they're all properly torqued, which in my case, they are, because I use a torque wrench and torque them all to exactly the same value. So all I'm going to do here is rotate in an X pattern. So this front left tire is going to go to the rear right, and vice versa. And then I'm going to do the same with the rear left side to the front right side, and then that one's going to go in that place. So once I get these off, then the next thing I want to do is just sort of check around and make sure everything looks good. And actually here in a minute, I'm going to lift the car up and take a better look, because I did do an air suspension install 6,000 miles ago. I do want to take a look and see how all of that looks underneath and make sure I don't have anything weird like airlines being pinched or anything like that. So once I get these tires all off, then I'm going to lift the car up again higher, and yeah, take a look around. Let's see how things are looking right now. All right, you can see how things are looking from inside the wheel well. You can probably see that airline running in the lower control arm there. Everything's looking good. Yep. So pretty simple. Bags there, control arm is running, or airline is running through the lower control arm, up through the hole in the top of the scissor, I'll call it, of the upper control arm, and then straight into the floor. And we essentially have the same thing on the other side. That all looks good. Here you can see probably better where it's going up into that control arm. You have my DCC deletes, which are working great. Those are from EQT as well. Yeah, everything's looking nice. As far as the front goes, you can see where I'm coming out of the, there's a hole up here. I'll show you some more video of this later. and where it's running. And that is actually running along the inside across. I believe I showed you that in my previous video. Yeah, everything's looking good. And just as before, I like to work smarter and not harder, so I drop the car back down to make it a little easier to slide these tires on. By the way, that little tire stud thing that I use to align the tire and hang it, the tire hanger, that is worth its weight in gold. And it's not very heavy, so it's not very expensive. Yeah, anyway, torque everything to 90 foot-pounds I do. By the way, I love this torque wrench. This is an Icon split beam torque wrench. So I never have to change it. I don't have to like untorque it like a normal torque wrench. I can just leave it set and it stays at 90. And, you know, obviously, if I need to torque something else other than my wheels, then I will change it. But it's nice to have a torque wrench that I can just always have ready to go. To clear your oil change service, you hold down your trip odometer button. When you hit the start button, it will ask you if you want to clear it. You hit the trip button again. Then I'm going to go ahead and start the car, let it warm up for a little bit, and check the oil. And basically, that lets all of the oil circulate around, get into the oil filter. It's already warm. It's warm here in Florida. It doesn't take long to warm up the car, but I can get a good check. And you can see here, I've got some hash marks showing me that I've got some room to add a little bit more oil. So I'm going to do that. You can see the container that I put all that excess oil in, because remember, I end up buying more than I actually need in most cases. So that goes into another little container that I keep on hand. And now, yep, it's good. I'm going to go ahead and wait. And then in the drive in the morning, which is what you're seeing here, I'll check it again after it's hot and parked on a level surface. And it's important to know like how to check your oil. I know it sounds strange, but a lot of people don't understand like how the dipstick works. Mine's the one on the right? So I want to make sure that none of the hash marks are showing. But it's also important to know whether or not you should check it hot or cold. And on oil, you check it hot, operating temperature. But on coolant, which I'm going to do next, you need to check it cold, right? So know the differences of when you need to check things. So now the car is cold. It's the next day. I need to take care of this coolant. I use this Pentafrost by Pentacin. This is what the OEM coolant is. If you buy the VW branded, it's just this. This is a concentrate, so I need to add 50-50 with water, distilled water. And then I use a little cup from Starbucks that's cleaned out, but then I can just throw it away when I'm done. So what I'm going to do is just carefully measure out a certain amount of the coolant and then add the same amount of the distilled water. And in this case, I'm using the bottom of the Starbucks logo as sort of a reference. So I filled twice, which I can see that logo through the cup. I'm filling twice to the bottom of that logo. It's actually not a lot. It looks like you're way low on coolant based on that overflow container, but it's really not a lot of coolant that you're down. So now, like I said, I'm going to add in, to make it a 50-50 mix, the same amount of water. And that brings me just right to the top of the line there, the max line, when it's cold. And so, yeah, good to go there. Next time I start it, it's all going to get recycled back into the coolant system and mixed up. And we're done. That's it, guys. This is my maintenance day. I hope there were some tips in there that were helpful for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.